As the playoffs keep rolling along, could there be lessons learned from the top teams in the league that could shape Miami's roster when it comes to defense? Is that the path to future playoff success? We'll answer that and more on today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat, whether you're tuning in on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day. For daily content on the Heat, click that subscribe button on YouTube. Make sure you are following us on your favorite podcast app. Have a jam-packed show for you today. It's another round of our playoff lessons. We are looking at the playoffs, talking about what the Heat can apply to how they should approach their offseason. We have a couple of defensive lessons that are standing out in these conference finals, and then we're going to get to how the Heat can go about building a championship-level defense. But let's start with a look at how the Thunder have dominated their series, but also how the Knicks swung a game in the fourth quarter against the Pacers the other night. And the thing that stands out to me, David, is ball pressure. And let's start with the Thunder part of this, because that's obviously the one that stands out the most. You look at their roster and their personnel with Lou Dort, Alex Caruso, Kayson Wallace, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander as a two-way player, Jalen Williams, who is named to one of the all-defensive teams. They just have guy after guy. They come at you in waves in terms of what they can apply in terms of pressure defensively. And it reminds me a little bit like in the NFL, you hear teams talk about defensively, hey, we need like a too-high shell. We want two safeties way back to make sure you're not getting those explosive plays. You're not getting those 30, 40, 50-yard bombs. We're going to give you some of the stuff in the intermediate middle area, but we're not going to let you have these game-breaking plays against us. And obviously it's a little bit different because the sports are different, but the Thunder very much have a defensive shell, right? Like you watch a Thunder game and they've got 2-3 defenders up close to the logo, half court, and they just make it impossible for you to get into your offense early. So by the time you're even into your offense, it's 15, 14 seconds left on the shot clock. They're making you go super wide on your actions. You can't really just get into the paint, drive and kick the way that you want to. When they're locked in, they can change games, and they do it with that initial shell. And obviously helps that they have Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren behind it. But they do it with that initial shell. And I think it's the thing that has it's the one unit that has dominated the playoffs the most, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, but they've been doing it all season long. The way that they can flip the switch so quickly and so powerfully is really what makes them stand out above any of the other teams left. I think you can give the nod to Indiana in terms of their ability to have an ignitable offense within the last few minutes of the game. We've seen that time and time again from the Pacers group, but when it comes to the defensive pressure, no team has been able to do it so consistently, so well as the Oklahoma City Thunder. And it's just, they swing games in a matter of minutes. They could be down 5 or neck and neck, and all of a sudden they're up 15-20. I think they even did it against the Heat when they played. And this is just the path that they have followed all season long. And they have that incredible switch where they just pressure you, and next thing you know, it's just shot after shot going in their favor because they're able to ignite offense from defense very, very quickly. And so you're absolutely right. Like that kind of ability to be able to just apply lockdown pressure makes it so easy to generate points for them, but also prevents another team from getting into those sets and just takes them completely out of whatever rhythm they want to get into.
Most teams in the league go on runs with three-point shooting, right? They rely on the variance, and it's like, oh, wow, we made 3 out of 4 threes. Suddenly we're up 9. You know, that's kind of cool. But there's very obviously relying on the variance part of that. The Thunder aren't. The Thunder don't go on runs based on three-point shooting. The Thunder go on runs by just leaning forward and saying, we're just not going to let you move the ball. And we're going to just take it from you, and then we're just scoring layups and dunks on the other end. They control their runs in a way that no other team controls their runs because, you know, their defense powers it. We were talking, was it last week or something, about Eric Spoelstra's sort of ideal team, like his dream team, and to have that kind of chaotic defense, it's able to be that disruptive and truly fuel your offense in a way that only 29 other teams dream of. Obviously, that would be a dream for Eric Spoelstra, but that's the thing that stands out with the Thunder. And look, their defensive rating is even better in the playoffs than it was in the regular season, and it was the best defensive rating in the regular season by a mile. And now it's the best one in the playoffs by a mile. So what they're doing is incredible and borderline unprecedented. So when we're talking about like team building models, I don't even know if that's a realistic thing, right? Like to look at that and be like, yeah, we can do that. But I want to go back to the ball pressure part of it, because you even saw a team like the Knicks, very far from an elite defense, but they swung the fourth quarter of their game against the Pacers. We're recording this on Tuesday night, so this was Game 3. They swung the fourth quarter of Game 3 by doing the full court press, and they had McBride in there because Jalen Brunson was out of the game in the fourth quarter most of the time for foul trouble. They had McBride, Bridges, and Anunoby out there just applying that full court press on the Pacers. And that helped swing that fourth quarter for them. But what was really interesting about that is they kind of stole that from the Pacers playbook, right? Because the Pacers are the team that it's always applying that full court pressure, wanting to get out and run, create those turnovers in the same way that the Thunder do. They don't do it in the same way the Thunder do, but the idea is the same behind it. And they've got guys like Andrew Nembhard, Aaron Nesmith, TJ McConnell, who are just flying around and trying to create that pressure. So I think one of the points in these conference finals that are swinging games is that ball pressure, and when teams decide to apply that ball pressure. And some teams like the Thunder can just do it all the time, and Indiana can even do it like 90% of the time. The Knicks could do it, I guess, more choosy, kind of can pick their spots when they're doing it. But either way, whenever teams do it, it is affecting games.
No doubt. It kind of shows, I know this is the overall theme of today's episode, but it just shows you what a great disparity there is between Miami's roster and everything else, and every other team still left in these conference finals, because Miami is so far removed from that ability. And maybe they had it in spurts with Jimmy Butler and a different roster and things of that sort. I mean, when you had Jimmy and Bam applying pressure and just so many opportunities for Miami that way, especially against the Cleveland Cavaliers. They just, I mean, I don't know if we even saw that during the play-in tournament where they had those moments where they were just locked in defensively. And it's just not what they're capable of anymore. They just don't have the personnel for that kind of pressure.
Davion Mitchell was the one guy who kind of switched it up a little bit and was able to apply some of that pressure. But to your point, like, that's not replacing Jimmy Butler and Caleb Martin and Gabe Vincent and these guys that have left the program over the last few years. And you saw Cleveland do it against Tyler Hero, right, in the first round, and how big of a deal that and how much that limited Miami's offense. So it's not just the conference finals. I just think that ability to lock in defensively and pressure the ball, and there's been people have written about this, about how when teams get into their offense early, their offensive efficiency goes up, and in a league where you're just trying to find any semblance of help defensively, anything you could do to limit some of these historic offenses, because every single year somebody's breaking the record for the most efficient offense in league history. Finding those things is really important. And if it is ball pressure in big stretches of games, then that's what it's going to be. I think the other part with the Thunder here is their ability to just not even to take that ball pressure and turn it into turnovers, right? Like if every player is just a better three-point shooter than they were 20 years ago, if every offense is just better, if offensive efficiency is off the charts every single year and improving every single year, and players generally are just better shooters than they've ever been across the board, then it makes sense to say, well, we're just not going to give you the shot, right? The possession battle has arguably never been more important than it is in today's NBA. So if you're able to just steal the ball and create another shot and swing a possession that way, those things become even more valuable than they've ever been. And I think that's why the Thunder have been so dominant, is because they're taking the ball away from opponents on 1/5 of their possessions. It's just insane. But again, I don't know if that's even replicable at this point.
No, I don't. I mean, you have to give credit to Sam Presti. I don't know why we don't acknowledge him much more effectively in terms of his ability to scout and things of that sort. Like, I mean, he's done it pretty consistently. And I know there was a pretty, not bleak necessarily, but not a great time in between the Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook era and this current incarnation of the team. But I mean, it's not like they were very poor for very long. They've still been very good. They still had Chris Paul. They managed to make some really smart acquisitions there. And I mean, maybe it's just the ability that, they lost Kevin Durant, obviously, in free agency, but to be able to rebuild from that as quickly as they have, I don't know that any other team has been able to make a kind of recovery of losing a player after having won an MVP. And maybe they had another one, I guess, in terms of Russell Westbrook, but just his ability to build teams and with a focus on two-way ability, I'd have to say it's probably unparalleled around the league. I think he's just got his scouting department, whoever it is that's leading the charge there, has done an incredible job of being able to figure out the right pieces and be able to acquire them and to make some really incredible moves, like even smaller moves that Hartenstein, maybe not a move that really stands out. Caruso, like they're just on and on. There's these players that have been acquired, not just a great draft picks within the top 5, but I mean, even Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was an absolute steal. And we talked about that in terms of our comparison to Tyrese Halliburton. It's like, can you find that next superstar who's on the cusp? And I mean, you're looking at those two teams specifically. Halliburton wasn't viewed anywhere near to the level where he is right now, and he's swinging things in terms for Indiana. And look at what Shai is. He just won the MVP, and that maybe those are two aberrations, but it bears kind of noting. I think it's important, worth noting that you can find those kind of players, and maybe you don't have to necessarily give up as much as you might expect,
or tank, right? And
or
the
tank.
Thunder didn't really. The Thunder did tank a little bit, but also
soft tank.
Yeah, it was a soft tank. They were sort of forced to because their star players wanted to leave. I mean, they did trade Paul George. They didn't have to do it, but whatever. The other important part there with SGA is that he's a two-way player, right? He's part of that defensive shell. He's part of that awesome perimeter defense. He's not their best defender, but he's by no means a negative either on that end, which kind of leads us to our next thing here. I've got another defensive lesson. This is more about what not to do. Unfortunately, the Heat might already be doing it. We'll talk about it next here on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by DoorDash. NBA fans, you know what time it is. It's playoff season, and that means big performances and even bigger rewards. DoorDash is bringing the Heat with a slam dunk deal for Dash Pass members during the 2025 NBA playoffs. It's called They Swoosh, You Score. Anytime a player drops 50 or more points in a playoff game, Dash Pass members score a free 3-piece crispy tender combo from Wingstop the very next day. You just place an order of $20 or more and use the code WINGSTOP50 at checkout, and that combo is yours. Crispy, delicious, and totally free. Offer is valid noon to midnight the day after the game, and terms do apply. So many different options. What's your go-to move after an epic game? Are you ordering wings or reliving the highlights from that big game? Well, imagine being rewarded with free food just because someone went off for 50 points. So here's the play. Sign up for Dash Pass to unlock this and more exclusive deals all season long. And when any player scores 50 points or more in a playoff game, Dash Pass members can grab a free 3-piece crispy tender combo from Wingstop the very next day with $20 plus order and the code WINGSTOP50. That's Dash Pass. Your door to more savings, more flavor, and more ways to win. Terms do apply.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. We talked about a defensive shell. I want to talk about a defensive spine. So, you look at the Knicks, and I think one of the reasons they're down in this series is they have a roster problem, just the way that they're built, and it starts with Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns.
Sure.
When you've got Towns as your 5 and Brunson as your 1, that creates like this defensive spine that's just a little too flimsy. And as good as Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby are, and I know that Tom Thibodeau made that big adjustment to start Mitchell Robinson at the 5, so then you kind of move Towns to that 4 spot, and that, they ended up winning the game, so maybe that's just the answer going forward for them. But, before that, with Brunson and Towns, they were having a really hard time defending at the level that they needed to defend. They had a defensive rating with Brunson and Towns on the court together in the playoffs, a defensive rating of 117.3. That would have ranked 26 in the league in the regular season. Bad. Bottom 5 defense. And somehow they're in the conference finals. So I don't think that works, and I think Tibbs made the change to the starting lineup because of that. I still think that the Pacers are going to win the series. I don't know about you. I thought the Knicks got kind of lucky in Game 3. We'll see. How
you could argue that the way that they gave up Game 1, they could just as easily be up 2-1. So I guess that's the argument in New York's favor. But I feel like momentum swung in Indiana's favor early on, and I don't know that the Knicks have enough to get it back.
Do you agree with that, I guess, before we move any forward with this, that they have a problem with that roster?
Yes. Yeah. Those are supposed to be, in my opinion, I think that the two linchpins of your offense is the 1 and the 5. And if you can operate out of that, I think that gives you a good exoskeleton, if you will, like the outer shell of your defense. And then you can kind of, as long as you have a good point of attack defender and a solid backline defense in your center position, I think that makes all the difference in the world. And I think that's where New York struggles, at least in terms of today's NBA. I know that historically that hasn't been the case. You probably thrive more with wing defenders, and it's not like you don't need those. But I think because you have to be able to account for the incredible shooting in today's game, you have to be able to send somebody out there that can cause havoc, force turnovers, make things difficult before players get into a comfortable rhythm and just start letting it fly from 25, 30 feet out. And that's just what we're seeing. I mean, it's going to become the new normal. It's not just Steph Curry. It's not just Trae Young. We see it more and more where every team has somebody like, I mean, we saw Tyler do that, pulling up, not with great frequency, but still feeling more than enough comfort and saying, yeah, I'm 27, 28 feet away, something you would never have expected 20 years ago. And yet you see it with frequency throughout the league. And so you have to be able to have somebody that can pick up that initial ball handler and make things difficult. And should they get past them, because the league is as structured as it is now to generate points from the paint, backline defense as well, and New York doesn't have that.
Right, and teams are so good at attacking mismatches now too. I mean, if you watch a game from 15 years ago, it's like they don't even care about weak defenders on the court, right? Like
right.
You know, guys like, no offense, like guys like Jason Williams were able to be in the league forever. Today he'd be played off the floor, right?
Yeah.
And love Jay Will, but it's that thing now that if you've got Brunson out there and Towns, and I thought Karl-Anthony Towns has mostly been bad defensively in this series. I think that there's been too much criticism heaped on him, and somehow Jalen Brunson has escaped it, even though he's been equally as bad defensively. And maybe it's just an expectation thing because you're like, well, Towns, you're a center, you're 7 feet tall, you should be better defensively. Brunson is undersized. But he's also escaped all of the criticism defensively. I think you could survive if you have one of Brunson or one of Towns on the court at the same time because you have one weak link defensively and you can cover up for it. New York's problem is that that's their best offense, is the 1-5 pick and roll between Brunson and Towns. So you can't really afford to have them off the court because then you can't really score. We're nitpicking because the Knicks are obviously in the Eastern Conference Finals. I'm not sitting here telling you that the Knicks stink because they're obviously a very good basketball team. But if they have something that's going to create a ceiling on how far this team can go and limit them from prevent them from winning a championship, it's going to be that. It's going to be the fact that their two best players that have to be on the court in the most important moments are also their weakest defenders, and the numbers bear it out. When it gets to Miami, my question is, are we already seeing that issue starting to develop, or maybe perhaps even already here, with Tyler Hero and Kel'el Ware? Because Tyler Hero, we know what his defensive weaknesses are. Like, he's just inherently never going to be an above average to a good defender. He's undersized, short wingspan. No matter, even if he's in the right spot, players will be able to shoot over him. He's not strong enough to fight over the screens the way that somebody like Lou Dort can, right? Like, that's just not that's not his bag. Kel'el Ware is a rookie. So he wasn't very good in the playoffs. I thought, kind of similar to what I was talking about with Cat and Brunson, I thought Tyler Hero got way too much of the criticism against Cleveland. He wasn't good defensively, but I thought he kind of was getting all the criticism and Kel'el Ware was getting none of the criticism, even though Kel'el Ware was just as bad as that backline defender on those 1-5 pick and rolls that Cleveland used to tear up Miami's defense. So I guess my question to you, David, is can Tyler Hero and Kel'el Ware together be better defensively? And I want that to be the key word here, defensively, before this gets taken out of context by certain people, than Brunson and Towns are defensively.
I think absolutely that's the case. But it's just, you have to include the context of what we saw from Kel'el. I mean, this was a rookie season where he's undersized, underweight, still trying to figure out the timing and things of that sort. But I think there are enough flashes. And if you're going to look to anything that might be responsible for the misdirection of vitriol towards Tyler and not towards Kel'el, I think it's the fact that he, in his minutes, could account for a block shot or two. And that's kind of statistic. It says, well, at least I can see the defensive pressure that he's capable of, even though he's getting killed in pick and roll or getting killed in a one-on-one situation in the low post. Like there are enough problems there that are very tangible that he can kind of, again, trick you into thinking he's a solid defender because he can block a shot or two. Shouldn't take away from the fact that there were moments there where he could have certainly been better. But I think the potential is there. And that's the thing, is like when you look at what he was able to accomplish, you also have to consider that he's just a rookie. And how often do you see rookie players have that kind of immediate impact defensively? I think it's never been seen in NBA history. And so if you're going to make that comparison, I mean, we talked about Ware, and I don't think it's way off base even now. I mean, he's a Wemby light, very, very light, but still a Wemby light. But at least that bodes well for what Miami's looking to improve on defensively, because there is the potential there for him to put on weight, to understand the timing a little bit more effectively, to be able to understand the cadence and the footwork with which he needs to be able to make these adjustments defensively so he doesn't get roasted in pick and roll situations. And I think there was even gradual improvement over the course of the season. And if he's able to use those skills that he'll learn along with an added bulk and the shot blocking experience that is already just baked into his length and size, I think you have the potential to be a really, really good defender. And so I don't see the situation playing out similarly to what we saw in New York. Do you?
No, I agree with everything you said. I remain very high on Kel'el Ware. I think defensive, I like everything that I've seen from him. And you know me, I was low on him during the draft process. I didn't have him on my board. I didn't think that the Heat should draft him. And I'm happily been proven wrong on that. He's been awesome for Miami. Everything you hear from the coaching staff and the way that he's learned and developed and all these things. Again, it was rough, but he's a rookie. It should be rough in the playoffs. If that was a welcome to the NBA moment, so be it. I think he's going to be a lot better. The issue is, how long does it take? We could say that we know he's going to get better. We don't know when.
Yeah.
And I'm reminded a lot about what Eric Spoelstra talked about at the end of the season and talking about, hey, you know, we've got 20, 21, 22-year-olds who are asking to do things and kind of mature at a level and kind of play like 26 and 27 and 28-year-olds. The Heat can't just pop these guys into a time machine. You know, like this isn't an easy bake oven. Like you can't just do it. Like it's going to take them until like you start playing like a 26, a 27, and 28-year-old when you're 26, 27, and 28 years old. And by then, Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo, like they're not going to, they're ready to compete for championships right now, right? Bam's already played in 2 NBA finals. He's not, it doesn't make sense to wait on these guys. So unless you think that Kel'el Ware could be that level of a defender by the playoffs next year, doesn't have to be at the start of the season, but by the one more regular season of seasoning, do you think that he could be at the level he needs to be defensively by the playoffs next year? That to me would be, and you and I don't have that answer, but and nobody has that answer. But it's, I think, something that the Heat's front office and coaching staff has to figure out, not in terms of whether or not we're going to trade Kel'el Ware or whatever it is, but do we need more help at the center spot? Do we need to add a veteran? Do we need to do something like that just to make sure that we have the kind of reinforcements that we need should we end up in the playoffs and needing a defensive stop? Or maybe just our best lineups are going to be Bam at the 5 anyway and doesn't really matter. But if that's the case, then we got to make sure that we have enough stuff around Bam that we could still be elite defensively, because that also wasn't necessarily the case this past year. So that leads us to our next part here. How can the Heat build a championship level defense? We'll talk about that next here on Locked On Heat. All right, so this is the part that everybody really wants to know. All right, really cool. Great analysis on the NBA playoff guys. What does it mean for the Miami Heat? This is what it means. If you're looking at how the Heat can construct a championship level defense, I think we've established a couple of things based on off our playoff lessons here. You got to be able to pressure the ball, and you need a strong defensive shell, but you also need a strong defensive spine. And your 1-5 pick and roll interference has to be pretty strong, right? Like you can't just make it that easy for opponents to pick on your weak defenders and get to their pet actions whenever they want. So you need a strong defensive shell and you need a strong defensive spine. My question to you, David, is who on the Heat's roster currently fits sort of that build?
Well, I think there's only one name really. That's
Haywood
Bam
Highsmith.
Adebayo.
Oh,
Yeah, I think Bam, obviously. Other than that, I think there's the potential for Ware to reach that point. I do, and I know that you just said that you agree with that as well. Are we including Davion Mitchell in this?
He's somebody that you would want to bring back, for sure.
I think so. But yeah, that it doesn't leave you a lot of options. And even in Mitchell's case, I think as feisty a defender as he is, and a really solid one, and he showed some great flashes there, especially with more in the just being able to poke the ball free and stuff like that. And pick and roll, I still think that there might be a problem there moving forward. But in one-on-one situations, I trust his quickness, which I think was an underrated thing that we didn't really see as often. But his ability to just generate those turnovers quickly, poke the ball, and ignite offense, that was a very necessary boost to an anemic Miami offense. And so that's certainly something that you want to be able to continue to incorporate. But he is a little undersized. As strong as he might be as an individual defender, I still think that there might be problems if he gets that switch. I'd have to go back and look because I'm trying to think back. But I recall seeing a lot of possessions there where he wasn't necessarily so effective in that pick and roll situation. So he might not be the ideal solution, but he's a damn good one.
Yeah, I mean, the difference between him and somebody like Lou Dort is they're both about the same size. But
you just want the opportunity to rave about Lou Dort.
I love Lou Dort. Hey, there's some speculation that the Thunder might have to trade him because they've got some extensions potentially kicking in here.
You'd throw everybody in there for Lou Dort.
Oh my God,
we know that Presti and Riley,
all the picks.
We know Presti and Riley have a relationship, so that bodes well for you and your dream of getting Lou Dort in Miami.
But the difference between somebody like Mitchell and Dort, even though they're about the same height, is that Dort's got the super long wingspan. He's like a 6'9" wingspan. Mitchell is about an even wingspan. I mean, he's like 6'4" with a 6'4", 6'5" wingspan. So it's not quite the same to your point, David. But I still think that he's very valuable as a point of attack defender who can give you who has that energy to be that full court press guy, and has shown you on the court he can limit some of the best ball handlers in the NBA. He's got that off night nickname for a reason, not just because it's awesome. But I would put Haywood Highsmith in this category too. I think he fits, even if he can't be your top defender, but he fits like in a rotation of good defenders. Highsmith's part of it. I think Pelle Larsson can get there. I think he's uniquely strong and shows a lot of fight, but he's got to cut down on the fouls. But he's another one of those projects who I think could be a strong rotation defender. But he's not going to be part of your top, defensive crew. He's sort of the B team. But, that he fits. I guess the big question is, does Tyler Hero fit? And what does that mean? And, I'm not, just because you want to be strong defensively, we talked about like the wink link stuff and everything. If he's your one weak link, you could survive. You just can't have several of them, right? But the other thing I like about Tyler Hero is, we've talked about this before a lot, his ability to create steals and jump passing lanes. I think that's really important. And if you had a stronger defensive infrastructure around him, he could get more aggressive in doing those things. And I think all of a sudden you could see Tyler Hero average 2 steals a game. I don't think that would be crazy. But he would have to have a really strong defensive infrastructure around him, or something close to 2 steals a game at least. But, I think it's a fair question. And then the other part too is, if you're going to go after a superstar, that superstar, if you're not trading Tyler Hero in that deal, has to be a strong defender. Because you can't have 2 bad defenders on the court, plus potentially Kel'el Ware, who is still in the beginning stages of his development on that end. So I just think from a team building process, those are the things you got to think about.
But even more so, though, like I don't know that Miami can afford, as much as they might like to, I don't know that they can afford to lean too much into this idea of building a top-tier defense, at least not with this current iteration of the roster. It definitely needs some revamping. I know we keep coming back to the same point, but where are they going to generate offense from? Even if you were able to just have this shell and spine that we're talking about here. I mean, Haywood Highsmith, he can't play significant minutes. Like, you're just not going to get enough scoring from that position. And you're not going to get it from Bam. You're not going to get it from Ware at this stage. You're not going to get it from Davion Mitchell. So, I mean, maybe you could build a top-tier defense, but what makes Oklahoma City and Indiana stand out, and even, again, in moments, New York, is their two-way ability. normally that phrase is used to describe, oh, they can defend as well as score. In Miami's case, it's can they score as well as defend, and they don't have players like that. There is nobody on that roster who can score. And
it's what makes Giannis so compelling, right? I mean, he's an MVP who has a Defensive Player of the Year award. It's why and you've heard Mark Steiner reporting, like, we have no clarification on whether or not Giannis is going to ask out of Milwaukee, but you've got every team in the league starting to prepare their Giannis packages just in case word comes across the line here. Yep, we're open for business. And at that point, and he's the sort of player that you would just trade whatever it is for to go get that guy, because you know you're not giving up anything defensively. You're getting a former Defensive Player of the Year there, and you're getting somebody who can average 30 points per game on offense. And even if there's concerns with the floor spacing, all that stuff, you're just like, well, the hell with all that stuff. This guy's an elite two-way player. We'll figure the rest out later. And that's the right approach. So, yeah, it's why somebody like that. So you're right. You're absolutely right, right? It's everything's there's a balance to all of it. You might not be able to be that. That's why I was kind of talking about Oklahoma City is a model that isn't even worth trying to repeat, because it just feels so impossible, right? So, but maybe there's something in Indiana that feels a little bit more replicable, where you're not elite defensively, but you can turn it on, and you got the things that you need to do the things that you need in terms of the ball pressure and the situational defense. And I think that, like, the Pacers, I trust when their best 5 players are out there, I trust them to get a stop at the end of the fourth quarter, right? Like, it's their bench isn't that great defensively, and that drives the overall defensive rating down. But Nesmith, Nembhard, Turner, Siakam, those guys are awesome defenders, and they have a weak link in Halliburton on the perimeter.
Yeah, and look, I mean, everybody loves this Indiana team because they've come from out of nowhere. Although, I mean, they were there last year as well. But
True.
I mean, Miami was kind of in the same model, right? I mean, isn't that what they did for a number of seasons during Jimmy's tenure here? Is that they just continued to show out and flip that switch? Maybe they wouldn't play 48 minutes, and maybe it helps again to have an elite defender, one of the best defenders in Bam Adebayo, playing at a high level. Turner's not in that category. He's a solid defender. He's capable. I like Turner as a kind of the anchor to your defense, but you need certainly a lot of help along the perimeter, because he's
Siakam's really important for them.
Siakam is that's it. That is a key right there. He does make things a lot. What an underrated move there. We talked about that in the team building aspect, but they got an all NBA player in Siakam that was basically just discarded by Toronto because he didn't fit their plans there anymore. They didn't want to pay him. But that was, and look, I mean, that's where it is. Like, you look at OG Anunoby too in New York, and Pascal Siakam in Indiana. Miami has to be able to circle the skies like vultures.
I mean, that was the big thing, right? They wouldn't pounce on these guys because they were so hung up on getting a star like Damian Lillard or Kevin Durant or whoever it was, that they sort of just overlooked the OG Anunobys, who went for Emmanuel Quickley and RJ Barrett. And you're just like, what? And then they ended up getting one of the best wing defenders in the league because of it. The Heat are, as much as we like people like Davion Mitchell and Haywood High, they don't have an elite Defensive Player of the Year caliber, all NBA or all defensive wing defender. They have a couple of good ones, but they don't have that elite one. And I just tell Heat fans, like, watch these playoffs. Watch it when Nesmith and Anunoby and Lou Dort and these guys are locked in. Look at what a difference it is. Even Jaden McDaniels on Minnesota, look at what a difference it makes when those guys are really locked in. Like, the Heat don't, outside of Bam Adebayo, don't have a defender who even sniffs that area. And all these teams that are left in the playoffs have multiples of those guys. Multiple guys who can really turn it up a notch defensively. So, I think maybe at the end of the day, the Heat, obviously we know that they need to do something offensively. They got to get out of the bottom 10 in offensive rating. They got to get an elite scorer. They have to add a true number one option. They have to. But they probably also have to add another all-defensive caliber player. And maybe that player is one player. Maybe that player is 2 players. Whatever it is. But it feels like they need to do both things somehow this offseason, which, again, easier said than done. Yeah. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NBA Big Board Show. NBA draft expert Rafael Barlow reacts to every workout, interview, and rumor leading up to the NBA draft. Find Locked On NBA Big Board on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts.